to put a video on here. It's this handsome guy. He runs my country right now.
Two primary objectives of the residential school system were to remove and isolate children from the influence of their home, families, traditions, and cultures, and to assimilate them into the dominant culture. These objectives were based on the assumption that Aboriginal cultures and spiritual beliefs were...
Okay, yeah, so he's talking about this schooling system called the residential schools, and to know about how to manage or how to work with Aboriginals in Canada. This information is essential to that. You must know about residential schools if you're interested or if you are going to be working among Aboriginals in Canada. There he is. He gave this apology, and Canada is still struggling and working hard to, I guess, appeal to the concerns of the Aboriginal community right now. To this day, there's a lot of problems that they have to deal with. Okay, so yeah, I'm Trevor. I worked in a school on a reserve in a Native community for 1 year. I just ended up getting out of Teachers College. I was hired. I was so happy to get a job, because going through Teachers College, everybody is saying, okay, you're not going to get a job. What you can do maybe is you can work part-time at some kind of public school if you can actually get an interview. So you got to get an interview first. You work part-time, you can supply for a bit, then you can work full-time after about a year of working part-time. And then after a year of working full-time supply. So it's like part-time to a more part-time, more permanent part-time, and then a long-term occasional. LTO is a long-term occasional position. So that means you are working for somebody who's pregnant and they have to go on maternity leave. And so it's so difficult to get a job in Canada as a teacher. So I was happy. I didn't have to do any of this exercise. I didn't burn myself jumping through hoops. I got pretty much the first job that I applied for after 3 months of sending applications to all kinds, many schools in Canada. The first job I got was on a reserve. It was the first job I applied for on that reserve. Okay, so reserves, I was really nervous. I was super, I think he wants me to talk louder. How's my voice? Can you hear me, guys? Yeah. I'm clear as mud, clear as sunshine. Okay. This is, it's a kind of a difficult topic for me, just so you know, because it was a very challenging year, working with people with so much trauma, so much difficulty. I was nervous. I came out of school. I got a job, and I knew what I was getting into. Lots of challenges. I was excited. I wanted to learn the culture. I wanted to learn about the arts in Aboriginal communities. But I was also very scared, because it was my first time becoming a real teacher. So I'm like, oh boy, what do I need to think about? There's so much I got to think about. I was feeling confident, but I knew about the history of this place and how difficult that was going to be. I just killed the computer. So I was trying to plan really quickly. I had about a month to plan. It wasn't very much. And I should just enforce this, iterate this. I'm not an expert on Aboriginal culture. I experienced a year teaching and working with these people, but I might say some things that are a little offensive. I apologize. Please throw money at me later. I mean, don't hurt me. Don't throw tomatoes. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the reserve. What is a reserve? The residential school system, the current system of education in Aboriginal reserves, and my experiences. Okay, so a reserve is like a little plot of land, I guess. The government gives this land to Aboriginal people, and the Aboriginal people manage this land. They manage their group of people on this land. And I know from my experiences, there's small communities, not many people, a lot of sadness, a lot of alcohol abuse, a lot of broken families. Sometimes white people would go, or other Canadians would go to the reserve and they would get cheap cigarettes. They go like, yeah, I can get cheap smokes from the reserve because the taxes are different on the reserve. And so my experience with that is, my experience prior to living there was sort of brief. I was a little bit nervous about working with these people from my experiences. Okay, these are all the reserves in Canada. So there's very many, 3,100 reserves all throughout Canada. And that's where these people, the first people from Canada, are basically living in. There's a lot of first people from Canada who live in big cities. There's a lot of people who live in different towns, but they have these special locations and special towns. Can anybody guess what these areas are? You can put your hand up. What do you think the borders are? What might those be? And it's the original borders of the different groups of Aboriginal people in Canada. So if you have, I guess you could compare it to like the Japanese and the Korean and the Chinese. These are all different types of Aboriginal, where you have different types of, I guess, here's the offensive thing, the Asian population. These are all Aboriginal people, the first people who moved to this, or lived in Canada. They had their own borders prior. The population of the Aboriginal people in Canada right now is 1,400,685 people. And like I said, mostly living on reserves or cities, in cities. This is a typical picture you might see on a reserve. People have compared these reserves to third world in Canada, a first world country. Yet we have terrible living standards on the reserves. Some reserves are maybe beside a lake, so that's kind of nice, but they still might look like military, and the living conditions inside, you might have a family of 10 people living in a tiny house like that, and so they have challenges when it comes to learning, comes to education, when it comes to living with each other. It's a different thing than what I'm used to. Okay, so residential schools have a really big history. I'm thinking, okay, I'm out of teachers college, I got a job, I need to know the history of these people, I need to work with them, so I need to know how I can, like, what I need to prepare myself for. And yeah, this is a long history. I don't think these guys look that happy, and from what I discovered, their trauma ended up transferring into many generations afterwards. Okay, so my friend, he gave me this bit of information. Residential schools, they were basically in existence for 100 years. So over 100 years, people had to live in this situation. There was over 130 schools across Canada, so lots of education for these people in a specific way that was very different from their original culture or their original lifestyle. There was, like it says here, 150,000 children were students in residential schools. The managing bodies of the schools were churches, different religions, Christian religions, came into communities and tried to change the culture and change the spirituality. of these people. And there was a lot of fighting for the money to make these schools between the churches. And so we have really poor quality, bad clothing, child labor supporting the schools, making the schools continue. Okay, this is a map of my beautiful colored country. It's a big country, and you can see there's residential schools all over in different places. Catholic schools, Anglican run, United, Presbyterian, Baptist, Mennonite, but all Christian based. To change, I think, yes, it really affected people. And this is a picture of maybe a typical subject who had to go through that. There was abusive conditions, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, because these students are they're not talking to their families for years. They would go to the school. They didn't have a father to help go fishing with, to learn fishing through. They didn't have a mother to show them how to clean their bathroom or to give love to them when they needed. So there was a lot of abuse, a lot of trauma there. Until the 1950s, all Aboriginal people were considered wards of the state. They had to go to these schools. They couldn't say, no, I don't want to. I'm just going to learn through my family. They had to go to these schools. And the native people in the communities took them to these schools. So you would have somebody in your community, maybe your uncle, who had to force you to go to one of these places. And the government paid for that. So we have this generational trauma. Generational trauma, it's a big issue. It's felt today from generations past. So say my great-great-great-grandfather, a long time ago, he went to one of these terrible schools. He didn't get to he didn't get to see his father. He didn't get to see his mother. And so he's depressed. He gets out of the school. He has a child. That child has to go to the school. He doesn't get to see his mother or his father. He gets pretty upset. He loses his culture. He loses his language. And he comes back into society not knowing how to parent. So you have these parents who never saw their parents. They didn't learn how to be parented. And so they could not be parents themselves. And this is like 100 years worth of this. So right now the situation is pretty bad. You have a group of people who have no identity, or their culture is very vague to them. They don't really know their language. They don't really speak that well. They don't really have a spirituality. These people come from the forest. They used to pray to trees and what Christians would call like a pagan type lifestyle. Pray to trees, pray for animals. They don't have that anymore. And so I come to this school. They don't want to come to my school because so many generations of schooling for them was terrible. So what is the encouragement? What is the motivation for them to come and see me? I'm just very handsome. That's why I was very handsome, and I am a super teacher. I'm a really good teacher. Okay, so I'm going to be really compelling. The idea was to kill the Indian in the child. So that's what the residential school was set up. Beautiful kids, right? Beautiful? I think they're beautiful. And just being kids and living their lives, and they had to do this. These kids could be in the school that I was teaching in. But they're not. Those are from the internet. This is another example of residential schooling. Okay, so another question for you guys. This is Toronto, and I had to go all the way up here to Longlac. How long do you think it took me to get there? Toronto to Longlac.
London?
One day?
Depends on what time you did.
There we go. Okay, so I took a train. So the train ride was... train rides are, you never know if they're going to arrive on time. I learned from this guy, this train was always late. It took me like 22 hours, 24 hours, probably, maybe more than that on the train to get up there. Yes, good answer by the way, sir. You got to be prepared. Food's going to be expensive, so the students don't get to eat that much sometimes because their families are spending their money on drugs or alcohol. So they come to school malnourished, difficult living situations like I mentioned. The kids will be staying up all night and they don't want to go to school. They show up, they're sleepy. I'm reading this, I'm trying to figure out what I need to be prepared for, how I need to prepare for these kids. And there's so much that I was dealing with. It's like everything happening at once at the same time, constantly. And it was not easy. Some parents, you wanted to have them encourage their kid to come to school and to learn. But the parents kept on moving, so you couldn't contact them, so you couldn't go talk to the parents. Like this one boy, he was awesome, but I could never contact him. And some of the students would show up with these addictions. So they were already addicted to drugs when they showed up, when they were born. And so they had these learning difficulties. So what I kind of want to emphasize a bit about this experience was I didn't really, it seemed like I was just about to jump off a cliff. Like it really seemed like I was taking a big risk. I was really nervous. I didn't know what to expect. And I just kept on going. And I kept on facing new cliffs. So I was jumping off cliffs and I was surviving. But I kept on discovering there was more. I came up. I wanted to have a really good diet. I was exercising a lot. I brought 20 kilograms of millet. That's like 2 huge bags of rice or something, but not rice because rice makes me sleepy. I was trying to prepare as best I could. And I kind of hit a wall, but I hit this welcome sign too. This is Longlac. This is where I lived. There was a lot of cross-country skiing that was going on around this. These are skis on the wall here. And lots of snow and a lot of forest and a lot of friendly people, mostly French population. It was late when I arrived. It was dark. My principal gave me some blueberry muffins. She said, "Here you go. Nice to meet you." And I had a French grandpa who I went into my new room, and this guy's knocking on my door. It's like 12 at night, and this grandpa comes in and he's like speaking in French, and I could ne parle de français, I can't speak French, and then he just shifts into English, and this guy is out of control. He's like 90 years old, really tough, doing all kinds of things, really resilient guy. I go for a run in the morning, there's bears. There's a lot of bears up in North Ontario, and I hate bears. I'm really scared of bears, so I'm running, and I'm thinking, maybe if I run too fast, the bear will see me. Or I don't know, I was like outrunning bears in my mind. It was fun. And I had an orientation for a week before we started. This is the town. Clean air. After 2 weeks, I felt like my lungs changed. I came from a big city. I could breathe again. It was amazing. But it's such almost a ghost town. You have good people living here, and they have a good community. There's a couple schools. But it's sort of a little quiet, very, very quiet. You can hear crickets, you can see the stars, you can breathe. Yeah, it was an interesting place. And across the road from the town, this is the town, across the road was the reserve. So this is a picture of where I went to teach on a school every day of the week. This is a bad picture. There was better pictures, nicer pictures I could say, but there were some houses that were shut down. So my orientation was for a week. I managed to stay afloat during the orientation, which might sound funny, but in my mind I was going through I was trying to prepare myself as best I could. I was working as hard as possible mentally and physically to prepare for this. And I felt like I'm still not prepared. I just felt like, no, I feel like I might fall. I might fall if I do something wrong. You know, something bad could happen. I was nervous. And I got to know the staff. I had conflict with some people. I discovered the people I was working with sometimes had major insecurities. I think because of the generational trauma, they had lots of challenges there. So it was hard for me to talk with my one teacher's assistant, because I think she felt like I was challenging her a lot. I don't think she felt comfortable with me, and she got very nervous. And sometimes she would just respond, and I knew she was responding out of insecurity, not out of interest in her job, but feeling like maybe I'm a white guy, and she had bad history with white people. I'm not sure, but it was difficult to deal with her, deal with a lot of the staff. There was a new principal, and I maybe should have been more buddy-buddy with the new principal, saying, hey, principal, you're new, I'm a good teacher, and showing her all kinds of things and buying her chocolates and, you know, maybe making her very happy with me. But I just did my job. My teacher's assistant was maybe doing a little bit more of the befriending the principal, and that was a challenge for me, because later on, the teacher's assistant, the principal would listen to this teacher's assistant anytime. And for me, anytime I mentioned something, I felt like the principal would close her ears and trusted this other person more. But I did not know the principal. Okay, so orientation's finished. 1 week, and I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping for artistic classes. I'm hoping for students who do amazing things. And I did get some things. I was hoping for maybe some, this is my perception of Native culture. But people were telling me, one guy's a gang leader, one person's on probation, 99% of the 2 girls will never show. There's a boy who showed up with fetal alcohol syndrome. See, there's grade 2, grade 4, grade 5, grade 7, grade 8 out of 10 people. A very, very mixed class. So it was pretty tough. My TA says, I don't think you're going to reach them. I don't think you can engage these students. And so that made me nervous. And before the day started, one of the teachers said, do you know what you're getting into? Do you really know what's going to happen? And are you prepared? And I'm just thinking, already I'm scared, already I'm nervous. And then I hear these other things, I'm just, okay, let's give it a shot. I'm Batman. I can do so much stuff. I'm coming from a really great school. I have a pretty comprehensive approach to my education for the students, the way I teach the students. And I'm ready to plan and work really hard. But I still didn't know what to expect, and it was really nerve-wracking. And I don't know if I did the work I needed to. I don't know if I reached that point where if I was maybe accepting that these students were very hard to teach, and so I maybe didn't try to reach them as much. I know that I was working really hard, and I got to a place where I was working as hard as I could, and I knew that I was not in control of myself and of these kids as much as I felt I should have been. So it was pretty tough. So here's the school, lots of snow, maybe -30, -40 Celsius, pretty cold. And week 1, I'm not prepared, but I'm really prepared. The class blows up. There's 10 kids who show up. They're throwing stuff by the end of the class pretty much. And there's a fight on day 2. There's a student who gets out of his classroom, out of our classroom, just goes out the door and takes a Lego gun and holds the grade 3 hostage. So the whole grade 3 classroom, he's just like, hold them up, guys. The attendance after week 1 kind of drops by Friday. Not everybody's showing up. I'm planning every day, planning my face off till midnight at least, and then by the end of the week I'm even doing like a full night, staying up all night, and just hoping that I'm going to reach these kids and keep things going. I don't suggest doing that. Don't plan out all night. Don't stay up all night. Just kind of pace yourself. And I discovered a student who did some math lessons, half a math lesson. This is really promising. And one of the students, or a number of students, their levels of reading was tested, so I could see what I needed to teach them. This was a big success. Okay, I'm going to try something, an experiment. If I have a volunteer who can be a teacher, be the teacher. Does anybody want to volunteer to be a teacher right now? All you have to do is respond to me as a student. But I can also just continue with the slides here. The students were difficult. They would bang on the door. Yeah?
You need a volunteer?
Yeah, you want to come?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it. Okay, so this is going to be a worksheet. Just respond to me as a teacher.
Okay. I'm the teacher?
Yeah, come
Okay,
here.
all right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, volunteer. Okay, so I'm going to just let me in the door and respond to how I come in as a teacher. So
Okay.
if your student comes in and does what I do, like figure out how to deal with them.
Okay.
I'm going to try to recreate this experience as best I could.
Okay, class, are you ready for the next lesson? Who is that over there?
It's Trevor.
Just a second. You're late, young man.
What's swearing took me so long? This is effing awful. Man, take your time or something, man. Take your time.
Would you
What
please
are you
take
doing?
your
Hey, oh yeah?
Would you please
Oh,
take
yeah?
your seat?
You want me to take my seat?
Take your seat right
You
now.
want me to take my seat?
Take your seat right now.
I'm not going to take, screw you, man. Screw this. Screw this.
I'm marking you up.
Okay, whatever. See you later.
Please take your seat.
See you later. Screw you. Okay, this is a classroom over here. And so I'm a student, and you're watching me go to the other classroom. This is grade 3.
I'm sorry for the interruption, everyone. We have an unruly student. And what can I do? Some people are out of control. Trevor, would you please get back here?
Yeah! Oh, okay, see you later. Whatever. F off. Okay, so that was a typical, I would say typical day. I'm sorry if that was a little bit outrageous for some people, but it was difficult to deal with. How did you feel trying to manage that behavior?
I felt completely helpless.
It was pretty tough. So you had to try to figure out what to do with these kids and how to encourage them to even walk through the door. This is the boy who I was mimicking, actually. Really interesting boy. He was interested in science. He did this artwork right here. He took a little cart and just drove it around and drove it through the paint, and he mixed up his paint with his car, and he was so happy at the end. We posted this on the wall. Lots of ad-libbing, improvise. You see a kid engaging with an object, you get them to engage with it more, you direct them to doing something else, and hopefully it can be related to the subject that you want to teach, the curriculum. Ontario curriculum was something I needed to teach, and color mixing, luckily, was part of the art curriculum. So I got 1 point for this. Week 2, the attendance dropped to about 50%. I had open class for students, the families, so I wanted the student families to come in and to talk and to meet me. And there was 2 parents who showed up. One of them went on to be one of the most successful students. There was 2 parents. One of the students of those parents was more successful. So it shows you right away, parents' involvement in education can really help, but maybe the stress from parent involvement can also challenge them. Some of these students were working really hard, but a lot of them just didn't have that little bit of, you can do it, you can do it. You can go to school again. And this is an approach I encourage people to take in Korea, if they're teaching in front of Korean children, just like I know the Korean children work really hard and they go to school and it's a lot of stress for them. And so I hope to say that you are a superstar, you are a superhuman, coming in every day and being stressful. You guys are awesome. Every Korean in this room, you guys go through a lot of trouble. So I'm here celebrating. I think celebrating attendance is important. Here's this boy. It took me an hour to get him to do this. He was sitting outside, just playing with snow. I was calling him in. I'm like, I got some Lego. Do you want to have a sandwich? No, 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 no. And he was really hard to understand, actually. His speaking was difficult to understand. But I got him to do this. I just decided, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to put some paint in some bottles. Put the paint in the bottles. You can spray the paint in some boxes. Okay, these are now artworks. He's expressing himself. He's taking this paint. It's a color. He can choose his color, and he can use as much color as he wants. So here he's using all kinds of black. He really liked the black. I took that maybe as he's feeling bad, but I don't know. Next one. This girl, it's hard to tell, but she did some really great artwork. She was incredible. She was gifted with her art. And she showed up one day, and I don't know if you know, paper clips can float on water if you put them on the water a certain way. You need a trick with a tissue. She just came up, put the paper clip on the water, it floated right away. Some unbelievable stuff that could happen, kind of. And there's all this negative stuff all the time. So one of my co-teachers, she says, oh, my little girl, she said today she can chop up pills for her mother. And that's so disheartening. This girl is maybe, I don't know, like 5, 6 years old, and she's doing this for her family. These girls may not know how to chop up pills. They're not related to this sentence. But it happens, it's common. So if you go to this teach in one of these schools, I suggest you get used to indirect trauma. You have to manage it. So you have a student who's yelling, like I was yelling at my friend here. You have to kind of just take it, listen to it, and recognize the student for his emotions, but you can't really take it on. You don't want to take it on. I was taught how to restrain people, how to hold them, just in case they got really angry and attacked somebody. And learning how drugs affect people's minds. This is important to know if you're going to teach on reserve, because the learning is such a different thing. It's not just easy learning. There was a suicide pact. Girls saying they're going to kill themselves. A bunch of girls. So that was upsetting. That we somehow stopped that from happening, though. There was a gang of 8 children who were probably about 8 years old, each 8 to 10, 8 to 12. They decided to go into the high school portable and just destroy a classroom, picking up a computer. They broke it, they took it out, and they upended the entire classroom. They were kicked out of school for a number of days, expelled for about 2 months, 3 months, couldn't come in. Some students were creative. These kids, they're in an isolated community, very far away. They have no game room. They don't have a PC bomb. They're stuck here, and they need to do something interesting. A big truck comes into their community, and they think, what can we do with the truck? Well, let's break into the truck. Let's do something interesting. So they break into the truck, and they steal a bunch of gum or something like that, and then they're under house arrest, and so they have to stay at home, and they can't, if they don't go to school every day, and if they don't have a life as a young child should, with their friends, a social life, I don't know, it's, yeah, they're going to do it again, or they're just going to not want to do anything. They're not going to want to go to school. A lot of the times the student would show up on drugs. Not a lot of the time. Sometimes a student would show up, and you could see they were not in reality. Yeah, and showing to school with a shotgun. I heard stories about years prior to my time working there. A student just shows up with a shotgun, very angry at a teacher. Yeah, it was spooky stuff sometimes. This is the view from my balcony, and my landlord, my Catholic landlord, with a huge across, and it was a really nice sunrise. I always had beautiful sunrises, and reminded of Jesus every day. And this guy, Jesus, did affect me while I was up in this, working in this community. I returned to the church that I've been away from for probably 20 years or so, and started thinking about the Bible, thinking about humility and community. And this is maybe where we should probably end soon. But community is so essential when you're up and you're isolated. You're in this small place, you're coming from a big community in Toronto. I had lots of friends there, and I didn't have any friends up in this new place. And I felt pretty isolated. I felt like I kind of put a little box around my life. And I recognize now that is, if I were to do this again, ever do this again, I would need to take a girlfriend up with me, or I mean a wife, or I would have to just have a good support system. If you go up to teach on a reserve, go fishing, take risks, do different things. Try moose calling. I got to moose call at the side of the road. There's moose everywhere. I had breakfast of moose meat at my school, so they'd show up with just interesting stuff. It was a lot of fun, in some ways. But yeah, there's a lot of difficult things to deal with. So, time-wise? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. So I posted Bojo. This is a language, something that Ojibwe people say. Bojo means hello. Can everybody say Bojo? Bojo. Thank you guys. You guys are awesome. Something else I learned was Gina. Gina is like, get out. You're lying. It's like, Gina, or stop it. Yeah. Gina's pretty funny. All the kids would come in, every second word, it's like, Gina, Gina, all the time. Yeah, it was an interesting experience to learn their language and see the kind of things that they did. And eat moose meat. There's a lot of moose there. I had to survive one day. It was -40, and the power or the heat went out in the whole city, the whole town. So there was no heat, -40. So that showed people getting together. A lot of people. One of the people I knew called me up and they said, if you need a place to stay tonight because there's no heat, you can come stay with us. That was pretty important. Something really awesome that they do, an amazing thing that this culture does, hunting with, or fishing with a snare. So they have a rope in the river and they just pull the rope fast and they catch a fish like that. So these guys are hunting all the time. They're collecting so much food from nature and they're staying connected. And I was really interested in exploring their connectedness with nature by meeting them and experiencing this. However, there's a lot of other things going on that was more distracting. Here's a church. It's an Anglican church. It's made of logs, and they were going to tear this down. It's the first church I returned to. Here's some teaching ideas. I don't know, does anybody plan to go to Canada and teach a little bit? If you do, I can show you this stuff sometime. These are just ideas that I have for managing a classroom. I was lucky I could play some music. I have my guitar here. I would love to play you a song. So if you show up at this little opening of a hagwon tonight, I can get you some information. I'm going to be playing some music. I've been doing that for a long time. It seemed like this place had everything I needed. But there's still a lot of challenge. Here I had frost on my face from running on my eyelashes. It's, I think, -30. I had to cover my weights at the gym with paper towel. Beautiful place though, really beautiful, sublimely beautiful. I would love to return and go fishing sometime. So these people who I tried to teach, they're fighting a lot of biases. As you can see, a lot of people think they're lazy, welfare cases, abusive, alcoholics, homeless, insecure, and they're doing a good job. They're fighting, they're taking along. They've created their own school system, so they're trying to reteach each other their culture and their traditional ways. And we need to give them respect because they were the first people in Canada, they were the first people in America. They named the mountains before anybody else did. They named the ocean, they named the lakes. They were exploring these places and understanding these places before any new person did. So they need to have a strong voice. And I thank you for listening to me.